Alright, so let's finish up, and I want to make sure that I do allocate a little bit of time to our tissue lecture. Otherwise I'll leave you guys to all that on your own. So now looking at ATP, we'll just kind of summarize what we've talked about. You saw glycolysis, which was our substrate phosphorylation, and we're going to contrast that with oxidative phosphorylation, which you saw in the electron transport chain. So with glycolysis, we saw 2 net ATP, right? So 2 net ATP from substrate phosphorylation, and then we're going to see those 2 NADH that we're able to yield from glycolysis move its way over to oxidative phosphorylation. Where in oxidative phosphorylation, for every NADH, we produce 3 ATP, and for every FADH2, we produce 2 ATP. And when we sum that all up, you're going to be able to see that we get 4 ATP here. We get 2 times 3 for each NADH. That gives us a total of, we can add that up quickly, 30?
38.
And then, did I get that right? 30. And then the other one, 4. So that gives us 38 ATP. So total 38 ATP. We sum up our 30 and our 4. That gives us 34 through oxidative phosphorylation. Net 4 ATP, or net 2 ATP. This needs to be correct. 2 net ATP through substrate phosphorylation. So now you're wondering, wait, why? How did that come about? We had 34 plus 2, that's 36. How come we have 38 ATP? Well, some, depending on right now what we've talked about, is sort of the generic cell. And depending on the cells, some cells require ATP in the transition reaction cycle. So you get a loss of 2 ATP, but general rule is 36 ATP with a little bit of ATP used for some of the processes, depending on the cell. That's all it comes down to. So with that, we should know how we produce. But all of this was all contingent on oxygen being produced. Because what happens, going back to an earlier cycle, what happens if we don't have oxygen in this process? That means we can't get that last step to take place. And if we can't get that last step at complex 4, it'll be a backup all the way down to the very beginning. So we have to take a look at what's happening in anaerobic respiration. Think about through this whole process. In this whole process, with oxygen, we were using all of our NAD plus to turn it back into NADH to pick up those electrons. So as those NAD were getting reduced, we have a bunch of NADH. And if we get a bunch of NADH, we're doing a bunch of NAD plus to NADH. If we end up with a bunch of these, over time,